There we are. Okay, good evening. I would like to call to order the November 6, 2023 Lake Washington School Board meeting. Let the record reflect that all board members are present except for President Choi, who's under the weather and excused tonight, and I will do my best to fill in. Our student representatives, Ella Shi and Shira Avitan, are also, yes, I did it, are also present. Thank you, Shira. And are also present tonight, and we're glad to have them. The board values public participation and engagement in the meetings of the board. Board meetings will continue to be live streamed on the district's website, www.lwsd.org, and are available for viewing following the conclusion of the meeting as well. The public is also welcome to email any individual board member or all board members at boardmembers@lwsd.org. The first item on the agenda is a land acknowledgement, and Director Guthrie will be reading it tonight.
The Board of Directors of Lake Washington School District acknowledges that our district is on the indigenous land of the Coast Salish peoples, who have reserved treaty rights on this land, including the Duwamish and the Snoqualmie Indian tribe. We thank these caretakers of this land who have lived here since time immemorial. We commit to continue collaborating with our Native community to teach the indigenous history of this land and these local tribes to all children of the district. We also commit to provide the best possible education for all children of Native descent who attend our schools.
Director Guthrie. Next, I will entertain a motion to approve or make modifications to the November 6, 2023 agenda.
So moved.
I would like to request an amendment to the agenda.
Let's take that first. Yes.
I'd like to move to table the discussion for the compensation for board members. I don't remember which item number it is. And just put that on to the November 20th meeting
20th
agenda.
Meeting is our next meeting. Okay. Is there a second to table that agenda item?
Yes.
November 20th. Seconded by Director Stewart. It's been moved by Director Bleasner and seconded by Director Stewart that we table I believe it's the final item on the non-consent agenda tonight, which is a resolution around board compensation. And the motion is to table it for consideration at the November 2023 meeting. Any additional discussion around that motion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of amending the agenda tonight to table board compensation resolution 2362 to the next meeting in November. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. The agenda is the proposed agenda is now amended to reflect that change. I'll now entertain a motion to approve the November 6, 2023 agenda with that change.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Bleasner and seconded by Director Stewart to approve the agenda as presented, except for the change that was just approved by the board. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Tonight, also self-serving. Tonight we have a recognition of the Lake Washington Board of Directors as a board of distinction by the Washington State School Directors Association. Dr. Holman.
Thank you for allowing me to insert executive privilege and insert something onto the board's agenda. I think it's appropriate for us to recognize the board's work in this way, and so in that, I do like to take a moment just to share what is a board of distinction and how does the board get recognized in this manner. And so really this program the Board of Distinction program is about helping school boards govern successfully by aligning their efforts with the Washington School Board standards. And those standards really do highlight what do effective school boards do in their practices and their commitments to impact and affect student achievement. And so there's kind of three distinct components that WASDA describes. They call it inspect, identify, and inspire. First, the school board considers data that's relevant to to provide information and evidence related to the required essays. And so every year, WASDA puts forward various components for the school board to consider, and it's all about aligning data with those actions. Had the board not taken specific actions, you wouldn't be able to align data with those. Identifying and connecting data, results, outcomes, and impact is part of this process. I looked at how are these actually evaluated, and it's actually a panel of judges that include former and current ESD superintendents, so our Educational Service District superintendents, State Board of Education board members, former school directors, and other educational leaders in Washington State. They go through a process of actually scoring the submittal based on a rubric, and those that meet the qualifications of scoring actually are awarded the WASDA School Board of Distinction Award. And so that means that there's submittals that could not qualify, and there's submittals that do qualify. And so tonight is to recognize the Lake Washington School Board of Directors, to offer you a congratulations and a thank you. This is your third year in a row receiving this honor, and it means that you are committed to your own work, ensuring that you conduct self-assessments as a school board, that you're committed to ensuring equitable practices for students, that students are achieving at high levels, and that you continue to do your work as board members of this community. And so I want to offer a congratulations and a thank you for your ongoing service.
Thank you, Dr. Ullman. The next item on the agenda will be public comment. And do we have we've had a slide that we were able to, do we have that? Okay, I'll just start talking as we're doing that. So the next item on the agenda will be public comment. The Board of Directors welcomes the public to the business meetings of the board and encourages community engagement. The board dedicates 30 minutes to hear from the public during the public comment period of the meeting. Participants should not expect a response from the board at the end of their comments, as we dedicate this time to listening to your voice and would like to get as many members of the public an opportunity as possible to speak as time allows. The board does not discuss personnel matters at board meetings. Should the public wish to provide information to the board, these issues or concerns about individual staff members should be addressed with the board through letters or phone calls. Members of the public can sign up to participate on the district website, and that address is lwsd.org/board/public comments. And sign up closes at noon on the date of the board meeting. Comments will be offered in the order of sign up. We have eight people signed up for tonight. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. We use a traffic light system. The green shines at the beginning. You have 3 minutes. Yellow will be at 1 minute, and red, when red, please conclude. And after that, I'll politely ask you to wrap it up. If you'd like to submit a written copy of your comments, and if you're willing to do that, we would appreciate it. Please send those to boardmembers@lwsd.org. That email alias is distributed to all members of the board. So we will start with the first sign up on our agenda tonight, Jennifer Bowe. And can we make sure that it's a microphone? Here we are.
Oh, okay. All right. Do you just want me to wait until it's green?
Please go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. I'm here to discuss anti-Semitism occurring in our community and the lack of response from the district to the atrocities that took place on October 7th. The local Jewish community has been discussing the influx of anti-Semitic aggressions happening at our schools since the massacre in Israel. I want to preface by reminding the board of Lake Washington's stance on leading with equity. We will work to harness and include the power and wisdom of historically marginalized, and traditionally non-dominant communities. Jews make up 0.2% of the world population. In the past 15 years, there have been several major attacks on Jews in the United States. We have been hunted and exiled globally for millennia, and just since 1945, we are down well over 6 million Jews. Journalist Barry Weiss stated that anti-Semitism is a shape-shifting worldview where Jews are transformed into whatever a given society hates most. Lake Washington School District proudly displayed inclusivity and care with an incredibly clear stance supporting Black Lives Matter, LGBTQIA students, and the Ukraine conflict. Mandated half-mast flags with generically vague rationale in recognition of lives lost are cryptic and ambiguous responses that do not recognize the emotional impact these attacks have had on our Jewish students and their families. The neutrality is evident. Therefore, this neutrality begs a question: why does this publicized compassion end when it comes to Jews? This sends a message to our children that marginalization only matters under highly specific precedents. Our students are scared to identify themselves as Jewish. As this angry mob grows preponderant, so does the threat to all Jews around the world. This past weekend, my sister's synagogue in Seattle was sent a threatening letter with a white substance prompting the FBI to address the situation. The reality is that your words and lack of words have a fundamental impact on the safety of all of us and, more importantly, our children. We've witnessed the result of institutions taking an obscure stance on anti-Semitism. This paves the way for individuals to conclude they're immune from consequence because those in positions of power won't reprehend this behavior. The Holocaust didn't start with gas chambers. It began with hate speech, intolerance, and the most profound determinants, silence and indifference. We urge you, Dr. Holman, and the board to make a clear, concise statement condemning the acts of terrorism against the Jews. We urge you to notify the student body that anti-Semitism will not be tolerated, and we urge you to implement the same level of care and education that you do for the other marginalized communities of our district. Your lack of response was a response, and we heard it loud and clear.
Thank you, Ms. Bo. Next, we have Dazi Anderman Shahar.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Dasi. I have 3 kids in Lake Washington School District. 2 are currently... I'm sorry? You can't hear me? Is this better? Okay. I have 3 kids in Lake Washington School District. 2 are currently in Audubon Elementary School, and my 3rd is in preschool, about to enter kindergarten in the upcoming fall. I am Jewish and Israeli. I moved here with my family almost 10 years ago. I grew up with courageous grandparents who survived the Holocaust after their entire families were murdered by the Nazis. Growing up with these horrendous stories surrounding me, I could never quite understand how such things could even be possible. Unfortunately, the past 3 weeks proved to me so very quickly how hate spreads so easily. Since October 7th, Hamas supporters and other anti-Semitic actors have threatened and targeted Jewish and Israeli individuals and institutions around the world. This is happening all over and right here in Redmond, in Lake Washington School District, in the University of Washington, in the streets of Seattle, on social media. It is everywhere. My job is, I'm a criminal prosecutor. I represent the city of Seattle in criminal proceedings. My entire purpose in my job every day is to make my community, our community and our surroundings, a safer place. But I have to admit, ever since October 7th, for the first time since I moved to the United States 10 years ago, I feel really, really scared. I'm scared when I cross the street going to my office every morning. I am scared when I enter the court when I'm supposed to do my job. I'm scared to speak in Hebrew when I walk outside. I took off my Star of David necklace. I am scared when my kids speak up in Hebrew outside in the street. I'm scared to send my son. He attends an Israeli preschool. We had to hire all parents 2 armed security guards for them to be safe because they attend an Israeli preschool. And we have parents doing shifts around the preschool when the kids go to play outside because we are really scared for their lives. I am scared as just 2 weeks ago, Lake Washington school volunteer at my daughter's elementary school came up to an Israeli group of moms and shouted at us, "Free Palestine, free Gaza, what are you doing here?" And she's an authorized volunteer at my daughter's school. I believe the only key to eradicate anti-Semitism and hate is through education. The education of our kids and community is in your hands. I want to believe that if we work together, if we make it a priority, our kids will be safer, our community will be more resilient, and we will all come out of this stronger and united. I really urge you to learn lessons from the past. Let's all build a plan to educate our youth and the next generation of leaders that there is no place for hate in our society. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Next, I have Marina Shadek.
Hi everyone, my name is Marina and I'm a mother of 2 kids in LWS district.
Marina, you may want to move the microphone.
Okay.
Yeah.
A 10-year-old in Rose Hill Elementary and a 15-year-old in Tesla STEM. I'm here tonight to share our personal experience of being a Jewish and Israeli family in the school system. Lake Washington School District puts a strong emphasis on diversity and inclusion, as reiterated in most emails that come from any district official. I'm very disheartened to say that it's been challenging for us, Jewish Israeli members of this district, to feel included. All the more so since the horrific Hamas attack in Israel a month ago. I thought that it's important for me to come here and to share this with the board and Dr. Holman. A few words about our family history. My husband and I were born in Russia, lived for most of our lives in Israel, which is where our children were born, moved to Canada in 2016, and then eventually here in 2021. My family has a strong Jewish and Israeli identity, and we know we know what it's like to be Jewish both in Israel and outside of it. Growing up in Russia as a Jewish kid wasn't easy. The anti-Semitism was systemic. Hate speech, discrimination happened everywhere. I was called names because of my Jewish last name, my Jewish nose. How do you deal with it? You live in fear. You think what to say, what not to say, where to go, where not to go. Is it okay to wear my Star of David necklace or not? Is it worth the risk? Why am I telling you all this now? Because my kids didn't have to go through this for most of their lives. They obviously didn't face anti-Semitism growing in Israel. They didn't face it for the 4.5 years we lived in Canada. Unfortunately, they have learned about it firsthand after moving here. My son had anti-Semitic incidents in every school we went to in the district. Kids praised Hitler for killing Jews in gas chambers, raised their arms in Nazi salute in school corridors. Many of our friends here had the same experience. And what absolutely destroys me, lack of strong response from the schools. We feel not included. We don't feel safe. We don't feel the district rules and handbooks applicable to the Jewish community. It's been a very stressful month. We are worried about our family, friends in Israel, but we're also anxious about the safety of our kids here at home. Is it safe to send our kids to school when some terrorist organization announces another day of rage? Should I allow my son to wear his Star of David outside house? All this sounds very familiar to my childhood. So I'm here tonight to ask this board to take our experience seriously, to provide tools and means so that our kids could feel safe and included in the district schools. We, as a minority community within the district, would like to know what the procedure for handling anti-Semitic incidents, we should be contacted, what the response time, etc. And I'm asking this group to ensure that anti-Semitism is included in the definition of hate speech and hate and acts of hate. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shattuck. Next, I have Hadar Kazam Horovitz.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak to you today. I'm here to talk to you about a serious and urgent issue that affects our local community and our society: the rise of anti-Semitism in the United States, particularly following the massacre against Israeli civilians in Israel last month. Since the horrific atrocities against Israeli civilians by the terror organization Hamas on October 7th, incidents of anti-Semitism has gone up by almost 400%, reaching the highest level of ever recorded by the ADL. These incidents, including harassment, vandalism, and threats against Jews, Israeli, and Jewish institutions. Just this past Thursday, envelope with a suspicious white powder and hate messages were sent to a synagogue in Seattle and the UW Hillel, and now being investigated by the FBI. This war also sparked a wave of protest and incidents of harassment and intimidation on college campuses across the U.S., including the University of Washington, where I work. I'm associate teaching professor. Jewish students, mine included, have reported feeling unsafe, isolated, and targeted by anti-Semitic rhetoric and actions. Many of them avoid wearing any Jewish symbols while on campus. Some have avoided or withdrawn from campus activities or classes. These are not isolated incidents. Whenever conflict erupts in Israel, anti-Semitic incidents are always immediately to follow. Anti-Semitism is fueled by various sources of hatred, such as white supremacy, radical religious groups, and anti-Zionism. Anti-Semitism is not only a threat to Jews, but to all of us who value democracy, human rights, and diversity. It is a form of racism that dehumanizes a minority group, but it also often serves as a gateway to other forms of bigotry and violence. We cannot afford to be silent or indifferent in the face of these hateful incidents. We must stand up and speak against it. We must educate ourselves and others about the history and reality of anti-Semitism. We must work together to create a culture of respect, inclusion, and solidarity among all people, regardless of their religious, race, or background. This is why I'm here today to speak to you, the Lake Washington School District, to make a strong statement against atrocities committed against Israeli civilians on October 7th by the terror organization Hamas and the anti-Semitism incidents that is sweeping our country. To fulfill your mission statement, you must ensure that every student future is secured, not only academically, but also socially and emotionally. You must ensure that every student learn to respect and appreciate the diversity of our world and reject and resist the forces of hatred and intolerance. Anti-Semitism is not a Jewish problem. It is a human problem, and it requires a human solution. We all have a role to play, and we all have a stake in its outcome. Together, we can make our district, our community, and our society a safer and better place for everyone. Thank you for your attention and commitment.
Next I have, and I apologize if I don't pronounce correctly, and please state your name correctly if I mispronounce. Ashai Shavartz. Thank you.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to address you today. I'm here to share with you how the recent rise in anti-Semitism has already impacted myself and my kids, and urge you to act quickly and decisively to keep my kids and every Jewish kid within your school district safe. I have 2 kids in Lake Washington School District, a 12-year-old attending middle school and an 8-year-old attending elementary school. Both have already been targeted for anti-Semitic acts. I've never been more concerned about their safety and well-being within the school walls as I am in this moment. Since the terror attacks on Israel by Hamas on October 7th, both my kids were approached by their classmates. My 12-year-old heard kids in our class laughing. Jews are going through Holocaust 2.0 now. My 8-year-old son, was approached by a group of kids who yelled in his face, "Free Palestine." On October 13th, I questioned whether or not to send my kids to school in Redmond because the head of Hamas in the Middle East announced a global day of jihad, calling for Muslims everywhere to hurt Jews. To the recent events, there is a 400% increase in anti-Semitic acts in the US. But Jews, only 2.4% of the US population, were always disproportionately targeted. In 2022, Jewish hate crimes accounted for over 50% of overall religion-based hate crimes in the US. What is considered anti-Semitic in the context of the recent conflict? Is a call for free Palestine racism or anti-Semitic? In normal times, the call for a free Palestinian state is not anti-Semitic at all, and actually shared by many Israelis and Jews. However, the timing of the call as a way to show support for Hamas's actions on October 7th definitely are anti-Semitic. Hamas's goal is the extermination of Jews everywhere. Therefore, any support for Hamas is anti-Semitic. Hamas actions on October 7th were not only condemned by the US government, but also by the PLO, the internationally recognized representation of the Palestinians. Harsher calls such as "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free," or Intifada, are also inherently anti-Semitic, as they are a valiant call for the eradication of Israel as a state for Jews. So what am I asking you to do? I'm not asking you to pick a side and choose between Israel and Palestine. I'm asking you to do what you're designed to do, to educate. I don't blame the children who approached my kids. If you question them, they probably know very little about Israel, Palestine, the Holocaust. I'm asking you to educate them about anti-Semitism, not as a side topic or adjacent to other anti-isms, rather in a dedicated way. Furthermore, I'm asking you to take a strong stance against any anti-Semitic incident and address everyone seriously and harshly, since being silent demonstrates that these actions are tolerable, allowed, and I fear could lead to graver circumstances. I ask you to keep my kids safe.
Thank you, sir. Next we have Aspen Richter. And that is the last in person we have for tonight, and so we'll be shifting to virtual after this.
Okay. Not good with these things. In a complete topic change, for those who don't know, I'm Aspen Richter. I'm a parent of 2 students at Evergreen Middle School, and I actually wanted to come here tonight and follow up on my comments from last board meeting to say thank you to the board and to Superintendent Holman, as well as all the staff in facilities and maintenance who've been working on our athletic field. Equipment has showed up, and district employees are coming out, and maintenance appears to be happening. And I say appears to be happening because there's still been a lack of communication, like our staff doesn't actually know what's going on. Nothing's been communicated. However, we can see it with our own eyes. Things are happening. And we feel really happy and appreciated that we have been listened to, not just like, oh, I hear you. Okay, done now. But like, been heard. And it's been a really great feeling. So again, thank you. I typed out and submitted a separate written comment because it would not fit in the 3 minutes at all. Touch on a bunch of topics, not just Evergreen, but I think that are all related to communication, engagement, and I hope that you take the time to read it. I might have been a little bit too much in honest feedback mode. I apologize for that. But my purpose in writing it was just I had to get some things out, and I wanted to encourage more ways for our parent community and our district to both come together and exchange information and feel heard and get the feedback that we all need. So with that, thank you. And thank you on behalf of our Evergreen students.
Thank you for coming again. Okay, we have two individuals signed up for virtual public comment tonight. Is anyone signed in? No, okay. Okay. Was it perhaps okay, so are they able to hear us? I guess I can't see who's signed in. Is it possible they're signed in under a different name, or do we recognize? I see. Okay, no, I think not. Okay, so we had signed up for virtual public comment tonight. Sumathi Chinasamy, and I don't see them signed in, and Liam Foley, and I also do not see that they are signed in. So that is the extent of our oral public comment that we were receiving tonight. I also want to note that the board received written public comment from 10 individuals in advance of the meeting, also around the request for improvements and maintenance at the Evergreen Middle School fields. So thank you to all those who submitted those. And just a reminder for everyone who provided public comment tonight that you can email the board at boardmembers@lwsd.org. And if you are willing and able to share your comments in written form, we would appreciate that. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the November 6, 2023 consent agenda. I will now entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, it has been moved by Director Guthrie and seconded by Director Bleasner that we approve the consent agenda as presented. Dr. Holman, will you please poll the board?
Yes, Director Guthrie,
Yes.
Director Bleasner,
Yes.
Director Stewart,
Yes.
and Vice President Liberty.
Yes. Motion carries. Dr. Holman, will you please summarize the donations that we received?
Absolutely. So tonight we have over $54,000 of donations that we're receiving. Over $44,000 from our PTSA in donations, and our Lake Washington Schools Foundation continues to provide excellent support to our school district with a donation of $10,000. We just want to publicly thank them for those donations because it helps provide services and supports for students and student programs.
For those who are in the audience tonight, you are we're moving through our agenda. You're welcome to stay. You are not required to stay. You can leave as well. We will be breaking at some point during the meeting if you want to have conversations, but we're going to be continuing through the agenda now. On to the non-consent agenda. Tonight we will be monitoring 2 of our 14 operational expectation policies. Through these policies, the board establishes its values about how the school district is expected to operate and the expressed conditions that must exist as business is conducted. The monitoring reports contain the superintendent's interpretation of policy language, a review of current conditions, and monitoring data. The monitoring actions make up part of the board's oversight of this organization and assures the board that its operational standards have been met. And then following the presentation, the board will have an opportunity for questions and comments. And so, Dr. Holman, will you please present a summary of the first monitoring report, which is for OE9, communication and engagement with the community?
Absolutely. And so the board received the written report about a week and a half ago, last Thursday. And so this is just a summary of that report, which is also part of the board's packet tonight. And so OE9 states that the superintendent shall assure that the community is informed about the condition of the district and engaged in defining and supporting its direction. There's 4 specific policy components within this policy that we'll be reporting on tonight. The report is provided to you as in compliance in all areas. And so Area 9.1 states to assure the timely flow of information, appropriate input, and strategic two-way communication between the district and its communities to build understanding and support for district efforts. We have 2 specific indicators that we've approved for this policy area for measurement. And so just a summary of the report the board received. The district provides written communication to stakeholders consistently through our Connections newsletters. There's other ways that we send out information, but that is the consistent method that we use. One of the ways that, as we think about engaging unique communities differently and individual families differently, is through things such as scheduled home visitations. There's an actual protocol and process to do that well. I use the word scheduled because it's not just a drop by someone's home. It's actually scheduling, identifying purpose and intent for that visit. It helps us to get to know a student and families, and I've heard many stories when staff have conducted home visits where they get information and they learn about a student differently than they ever could have otherwise, just by interacting with them at school when they're engaged with their parents and family, really positive discussions. The district uses website tools to ensure language access. We have 110 plus languages spoken in the district, and so utilizing technology tools to provide support for language access. We also use Parent Square, which allows parents to receive communication in their preferred language. And we also can use that for direct two-way communication where the staff member can communicate in their preferred language and the parent can receive it and communicate back in their preferred language. We know that it's highly used and we've received very positive reports. We transitioned away from Let's Talk a couple of years ago and implemented what we call Contact Us on the district website. We received and responded to over 1,100 communications through that tool last school year. 9.2 states that we'll maintain family engagement that recognizes the developmental needs of our diverse students and ensures active participation of students' families. We have 2 indicators that have been approved for this policy component. And just a summary of these data, the district uses multiple strategies to engage unique and diverse communities through those processes. Again, we use a number of web tools and Parent Square to be able to conduct those engagements and communication. 9.3 states to develop connections and strategic partnerships through the larger community focused on understanding and contributing to the district efforts to help all students achieve defined district results. And it's an interesting indicator because it says at least one formal partnership is in place for each strategic plan priority. You'll note in the report, I printed them off because I wanted to make sure they were in front of me, and I think I'm on page 4 of these. These are formal and informal partnerships that I reported to you. Many of these are formal. As we thought about some areas that we didn't have as many partnerships that we were reporting to the board, I'll call your attention to both the excellent staff and effective use of resources. I asked our Human Resources Department about some of our partnerships related to recruitment, and you'll see here a new indicator or a new data point that was provided this year. It states ongoing partnerships with HopeLink and Workforce and initiating partnership with Lake Washington Institute of Technology and Cascadia College for paraeducators. And so there are many ways that we're thinking about how do we find employees to support students, and so appreciate our Human Resources Department providing that. In regards to the effective use of resources, previously we had talked about the shared use of the Old Redmond Schoolhouse, which, yes, that is a great partnership that we have with the city of Redmond, but when we thought about it, we have a formal partnership with Microsoft. While, yes, we're also we have contracts with them for our technology systems, but we also have a formal partnership where we actually work with them for the betterment of our district. We partner with initiatives and supports. There's times they say, hey, could we pilot something in your school district? And so gain access to new and emerging technologies that way. Things like Bing Chat Enterprise is a tool that is incorporated into every staff member's profile. And then another partnership that we've had in place for many years that we've never reported to the board, but the partnership with McKinstry related to our resource conservation management program and sustainability efforts. And when you think about the category of effective use of resources, that partnership has led to millions of dollars worth of savings in our utilities program, while also being the right thing to do. And so just a few additional partnerships that I wanted to highlight for the board. 9.4 speaks to an annual progress report being provided to our community. On our district website, we provide that for our community. It actually lists, I believe, the last 3 or 4 years of the progress report. And thank you, Director Bleasner, for finding the error in the link to make sure that our report had the correct information to share with our community. And so that's the summary of OE9, and the report is presented to the board as in compliance.
Okay, so first, are there any questions from anyone on the board about, or any of our student reps about anything that is in the was either in the presentation this evening or in the written report?
Not a question, but a comment. I want to congratulate the idea of working with an organization such as Ms. Kinstry and the others we've worked with, because the knock that always hits on any time you try and do anything to try and improve the sustainability is, oh, it's going to cost us too much. But you know, if you do it right, and you want to do it for the right reason, you could also do it for a cost savings. It's amazing how that works hand in hand at times. So I want to congratulate you on that.
Director Guthrie?
Yeah, I had a question on 9.1. One of the things that I was looking for and didn't see was communication around inclusion. With that being a big initiative for this year, can you speak to how you felt that went, and how what's continuing going forward and what might be changing?
Absolutely. You know, I think this is also a demonstration of two-way communication and feedback. There had been some high-level communication, and we heard from our families. We want very direct and intentional feedback and information around inclusion. And from that, we did both written communication and developed a series of videos that we pushed out to our families around inclusion. I believe it's a series of 6 or 7 different videos, 8 or 9 videos. I mean, they're 3 to 4 minute videos that talk about the various components of inclusion, which to me does a great job of hearing from the voices of, yes, district leaders, but also teachers, families, and students around inclusion. As we think about, kind of, your question was moving ahead, inclusion is, a way we do business. It is something that we will always be working on to elevate the experience for our students, the supports for our staff, and sharing that with our families so they understand the education their children are receiving, what do our schools look like, is an important piece of supporting the overall inclusionary efforts.
Any other questions on anything that was in the report this evening?
Yes.
Director Bleasner.
So for 9.1 as well, as part of that policy, it states appropriate input and talks about two-way. When I read through it, a lot of it appears to be one way in many places. And so my question was, are we looking, I specifically think of the several committees we put forward, which really is a much more directed community engagement. I actually didn't see, as I read through the policy, that was actually addressed anywhere. And it would seem either we're missing it in our policy or potentially it gets built in there. So I guess I would put that forward to you as sort of a question as to what your take is on that in reading it. And as to how we put forward the indicators, yes, it's in compliance. There's not a question there, but I do know there's efforts in that area, and it is a value of the board. So that was sort of a question. Kind of long-winded, sorry.
Go first. And then I had a question for Director Bleaser, actually.
I'm not able to pull our work plan up right now, but I believe OE9 might be on our work plan this year because I'm not sure the indicators that we've agreed to really speak to the values that we have related to communication and community engagement. And you just spoke to me, something that's glaringly missing from this. When I look at the indicators for 9.1, it feels very technical. First, it talks about at least 2 district written communications per month. And the second is about, using web tools. But it doesn't speak anything to what you're talking about, the two-way communication, the engagement, and those components. Because we, even last year, through a number of processes, our school start time, our boundary processes, and they engage stakeholders and families differently, but they both serve the opportunity for families to give input, for families to receive information, and to understand the process that's being worked on. This year, as you know, we have a number of different committees that have formed, some that have an actual duration, others which will be ongoing. Our facility advisory, our budget advisory, and our inclusionary advisory will be ongoing efforts. And so I think we can do a better job of defining our indicators so that what we're reporting speaks better to the values.
Perfect, thanks. I was just including that into the board summary as we go through a sort of a next step.
I guess, I'm going to try to phrase this as a question. I guess, so Director Bleaser, when I look at 9.3, I don't know if you have it in front of you. I guess the question is, do you think that the policy language, the board policy language we have right now is broad enough to encompass that two-way community engagement? Now, if you look at the indicator of compliance, it only speaks as to formal partnerships. It doesn't talk about the committee work that we're doing. Are you offering that we should revise the indicators of compliance, or that the board needs to look at revising the policy language?
Either way, because both would do. If you have it under the interpretation, that'd be fine. I don't feel it necessarily. I did read 9.3, trying to see if it called out well that idea of really direct community engagement in the deliberation of the activities of the district. I don't see that clearly stated in a policy, so potentially it might be.
Yeah, I think if we tortured that sentence into agreeing with us, that we could get there. But I think we could do a better job drafting. Okay, any other questions, Director Stewart?
I agree that we need to revamp that indicator, but also perhaps the policy to be more explicit in the two-way communication. It's great that we can reach so many people electronically, but it's also a disservice to ourselves and to our students and our families that we don't have the two-way face-to-face. Now, granted, for a lot of families with special needs students in particular, it's difficult, if not almost impossible at times, to get out at night to have that engagement, or during a day to get away. I want to commend the PTSA Special Needs Group for always having someone there for childcare. One of the paras or two of the paras will show up, and I would encourage us to use that same model when we're trying to meet with as many of the special needs families who are in inclusion. I would also want to make sure that we're not just talking to the special needs parents, we're talking to all of the parents, because engaging them and having them being receptive to it, to be quite frank, the kids usually are quicker to receive and encourage and include their peers than often the parents, because the parents don't get to see day to day, and they have a concern from a higher level, whereas the kids are there on the ground, so to speak. So I'd really like to encourage us to have more of a dialogue with folks, and on a regular basis, whatever it would entail. But if we have to do it online, to be quite frank, it probably would broaden the group, but it still that depersonalizes it too.
Any additional questions? Director Belizner.
Oh, yes, actually, I was trying to think, make sure it was a question and not just a statement. So 9.2, my take when I read that is regards to is how do we address all the diverse needs within our community and actually engage those individuals? And sort of building on what I asked about 9.1 was, how are we ensuring that that diverse range shows up onto our committees and within our groups as we reach out, not just at the school level, but also at the district level? Highlights greatly the work we are doing in regards to our family engagement, and it's fabulous what's going on there. That's the comment that I would make, and make sure it's added into our summary, because it's clear there's a lot of good efforts there. My next question is that next engagement at the community level of coming in. So that'd be the one piece I'd look at there as well.
Hearing, oh yes, Director Guthrie, thank you.
Building off that a little bit too, a lot of the evidence is around the Equity and Family Engagement Department, which they're fabulous, but it's what, like 5 people for 30,000 students. I would love to see more around how we're thinking about community engagement throughout the district, not just sort of having a center of excellence, if you will, within the Equity and Family Engagement Department, but how is the Special Education Department engaging with families? How is the Transportation Department engaging with families? Just thinking more about, not just saying, not saying that this is happening, but oh, that's family engagement's job. That's not our job. A lot of different departments are going to have different perspectives on the whole student experience, and making sure that that's brought in.
Before I forget, we do have on our agenda on December 4 for the study session, policy development work around both this policy, OE9, and OE3, which is treatment of the community and stakeholders. So,
in the thinking around combining those two is there's probably some shared interest between those two policies, and either we develop 2 separate policies or we do some combination of those policies to then just have a single policy.
great. Okay. Hearing no additional questions, thank you, Dr. Holman, for the overview and for the clarifications. So now, the board, we are to consider the report as evidence of the district's performance in this area of operation. And just a reminder of the criteria that we've agreed to. 1, the superintendent's interpretation of the current policy as written is reasonable. We've already agreed to that. 2, that the superintendent has provided evidence to assure the board that the organization is in compliance with the provisions of the policy. So I will now entertain a motion to accept and approve the monitoring report as presented, which is as compliant.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Director Belizner and seconded by Director Guthrie. That we approve the report as presented, which is in compliance. Is there any further discussion on the monitoring report? Director Belizner.
So I appreciate the discussion prior in regards to the fact that we'll have a meeting in December 4th in which to really look at some of those indicators that we're bringing forward on community engagement and to sort of revisit those policies. As written, yes, it's in compliance. I'll highlight, again, I would say the family and engagement equity work in regards to some very specific outreach, and that I think that's been a key goal, and it's good to see some of that pulled out there. Also in the expansion of partnerships, I think in my 12 years on this board, that is a pretty extensive shift of where we were and a much more inclusive thought of public school by ensuring that the walls of the school don't define exactly the experiences of what we have and what we're able to offer. So I'd like to highlight those things of some real good increases of being able to comply with this operational. Often we're in compliance, but there's often more we can do beyond that to even make it better. So it's nice to see that that work is still happening.
Any additional discussion on the report for tonight? Okay, hearing no further discussion, we'll proceed to vote on the motion. It's been moved by, I lost track, I believe it was moved by Director Belizner and seconded by Director Guthrie, that we approve the report as presented, which is in compliance. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Dr. Holman?
Can you remind me who is scheduled to do the board summary for OE9? And if it was President Choi, I might offer that another board member take on that responsibility since she's not here this evening.
It is Director Stewart.
Okay, great. And will you remind us?
Reminder that all board meetings are posted to the district's website and are available. Okay.
Will you remind me who is writing the board summary for OE10? You are, okay.
Okay. Thank you, Aaron, for that discussion. I think that was great. And I look forward to doing more work on this in December. The next item on the agenda is the monitoring report for OE10, which is the learning environment and treatment of students. Dr. Holman, will you please start by presenting a summary of the monitoring report?
Absolutely. And just a reminder, this is another one of our policies that is on the agenda for review and update this school year. And so this is, again, the policy interpretation and indicators that we've agreed to, knowing that I'm not sure this fully hits the mark with where we want to be as a system, and that's why we've added this to our work plan. But the policy statement says the superintendent shall establish and maintain a learning environment that is safe, respectful, free from unnecessary disruption, and conducive to effective learning. There's 8 specific components to this policy. There's 2 different sections. One states that the superintendent will, and there's another section that states the superintendent may not. And so those are 2 kind of distinct parts of this policy. I want to indicate as we walk into this monitoring that there are 2 specific components that are rated not in compliance, and I'll share those reasons why and some ongoing efforts, I'll say, to get those into compliance. And then 10.8 is in compliance with exceptions noted. And so the report states that, but wanted to summarize that for the board as well. So 10.1 states, maintain a collaborative school culture that ensures high expectations and success for all children in all classrooms through equitable and aligned systems and supports. We have a couple of different indicators that we've agreed to. Just a quick summary. Our school improvement plans are focused on the unique needs of students, staff, and our schools. SIPs, or school improvement plans, are aligned with the legal requirements that we're required to have within our school improvement plans, but it's also about best practices. The team has done work to ensure that our school improvement plans are actually the meaningful work that our schools are working on, as opposed to let's set a goal, set it on the shelf, and hopefully next year our data shows that we've made improvement. The goals, and you'll see those later this year when the board approves the school improvement plans, you'll see that the goals actually are the tangible work that our schools are doing around academics, social emotional well-being of students, but also our staff set goals for their experience as well. Our teachers participate in a very educational term, PLCs, professional learning communities, and what that is a group of teachers that have like responsibilities, collaborating, using data, identifying strategies, giving each other advisement and feedback, and then reviewing student work as they work through their implementation plans. We ask our teachers to work in collaborative groups. We ask our principals to work in collaborative groups. The board did a school visit at Rose Hill Middle School. You saw really the very beginning of a principal PLC where the Rose Hill Middle School team has identified what they call a problem of practice. And that means it wasn't fixed yet. And so they're still working on all of the areas related to inclusionary practices at the secondary level, push-in services, understanding co-teaching, and how that work can really then expand across that whole school. And so we're asking our principals to do that work. And then we do have systems that we ask our schools to implement, multi-tiered systems of support. Again, at that high level is ensuring that we have systems to identify student needs, student gaps, and provide supports for that. And how are we measuring that implementation? We actually have an assessment that each of our schools uses to identify their strengths and areas where they're continuing to work. Component 10.2 states to ensure an inclusive, equitable, welcoming, and safe school environment. And I would be remiss if I didn't remind us that OE 14 has a lot of similar components to it, and that was intentionally done because we know that OE 14 and our policy related to equity really does span all of our policies, and that there would be some crossover there. 10.2 is rated as not in compliance this year, and so right now our students are reporting a decreased sense of safety over the last 3 years. Our middle school students are reporting the largest decline, with high school dropping below the 90% threshold this year. And so, as we know, our indicator would be in compliance if the neutral and favorable responses equaled 90% or higher. The other two indicators that are in compliance, the district does maintain a thorough set of administrative policies to manage all forms of harassment and discrimination. And then our students avoiding chronic absenteeism has improved from 21-22, yet still is 6.4 percentage points below the target and not back to pre-pandemic levels. And so that's the other area of this policy component that is not in compliance. And so there isn't any one thing that we can snap our fingers and fixes a sense of safety, our students' perception of their sense of safety. And then avoiding chronic absenteeism. Again, it has to be a holistic response. And so when we think about our sense of safety, it's about the work we're doing around social emotional well-being and learning. It's ensuring that we're implementing our policies well. We heard from our community tonight around discrimination and things like that. Making sure that we are responsive to those types of reports, that is how we build the sense of safety as we're implementing our SEL standards, that we're continuing our work with our staff around interventions, our partnerships with our agencies, and our schools using their panorama data and actually setting specific goals for their context. Chronic absenteeism, pre-pandemic, this indicator was in compliance. Year over year over year, we had 90% or more of our students avoiding chronic absenteeism. And chronic absenteeism is defined as missing 10% or more of school. And so 180 days, you miss 18 days of school, that is defined as chronic absenteeism. And so since the pandemic, we have actually seen more students missing more time from schools. And initially, 2021, 21, 22, some of that was related to students who are required to be out of school because of the COVID response. We're still seeing, we saw an uptick in 2022, 23, so less students being chronically absent, but we're still, I believe, in the last slide, 6.4% below that rate. And so continuing to understand what is driving that and how do we remedy that is going to be important moving forward. 10.3 states to ensure that all policies and procedures regarding discipline are collaboratively developed, appropriately communicated to students and parents, and enforced consistently using reasonable judgment. There are rules around how we develop and monitor our discipline rules, and so we have consistently implemented those protocols that were required around engagement. I believe the team did a survey in regard to this and engagement with a cohort of families and staff. The variation, one of the things that we report is if there's a school with 10 or more exclusionary discipline events, was the variance in the number of days being excluded greater than 1 for any one discipline category. So I'll pick a category that's not a real category, fighting. There's a better term in Skyward for fighting. But if there were 6 incidents of fighting and all relatively similar, and one student received 1 day of exclusion and another student received 20 days, that would be significant variation. And so in our data, it demonstrates that the variation of discipline was not significant or not beyond what we've agreed to. Discipline rates are stable. There was a slight increase from 0.6% to 0.7%. We have one of the lowest discipline rates in the state. And so maintaining anything below 1% it means that very few of our students are receiving exclusionary discipline. And we also can report that our Black African American students, our Hispanic Latino students, and students from low-income households all saw a decrease in their discipline rate that was reported. We also know that even though we have a low discipline rate, that for a number of our groups we saw a decrease in their discipline, we still have disproportionality within our discipline. And so that is something that we're continuing to pay attention to and work on. The board is aware that we have different cohorts of schools working through things like restorative practices, working through different SEL components, because all of that plays into how we support and manage student behavior in our schools. 10.4 states to appropriately collect, use, and protect confidential student information. And simply, the district protected student information in accordance with law and regulations, and the district does maintain policies and procedures related to student records, information, and privacy. 10.5, assure that no volunteer has contact with students without first clearing reasonable background checks, inquiries and checks, and every individual working with students is required to go through our volunteer screening process. Last school year, we had almost 8,000 individuals go through that screening process, and through that, we actually had 8 individuals that were not approved because of those background checks to participate as volunteers in our schools with students. 10.6, again, this policy component is not in compliance, and it states that the superintendent may not tolerate any behaviors, actions, or attitudes by adults who have contact with students that hinder the academic performance or well-being of students. And so just a summary of these data. Again, we have policies and procedures related to the student experience and interactions. District staff receive annual and ongoing training. There are some trainings that we are required by law to provide to staff every year, and then just making sure that on an ongoing basis we apprise our staff of all of our policies is an important piece. That next area there is where this policy component is out of compliance. It's the percent of students who felt a sense of belonging. It remains stable, but below that 90% threshold. With our elementary students, no change from spring 22 to spring 23. Slight increases in spring of from 22 to 23 for both middle school and high school students, but overall below that 90% benchmark. And our students report that their teachers are respectful, and they report that at a pretty high rate. I believe 96, 97, 98% of students reporting either neutral or favorable to those questions. And again, as we think about reporting on the perceptions of our students, again, it isn't any one thing that we do for our students to experience a sense of belonging. You heard about this in our study session tonight. Our work of inclusion has belonging as one of those target goals, ensuring that our students know that they are welcome, they are safe, and that they are part of their schools and classrooms. And so ongoing professional learning for staff, the implementation of the Washington State SEL benchmarks, which in turn is the board's Results 3 policy that you measure early each school year, that our school improvement plans actually are focused and responsive to their panorama data, and again, efforts such as our restorative practices and our Tier 1 and Tier 2 support professional learnings that we're providing for staff. 10.7 states that the superintendent may not permit unruly behaviors on school property and at school-sponsored events by students or by adults that disrupt learning or that are disrespectful or dangerous. Again, policy component, we do have policies and procedures related to this, and we ensure our schools have those and that they implement those. Procedurally, we notify our students every year of their student rights and responsibilities. We receive a signature from our students on those, and we appreciate them following through with that because they do have rights and responsibilities, and some of those are related to behaviors on campus. Also, schools and district facilities, we do maintain signage that is in compliance with the law related to weapons and controlled substances on our campuses. And finally, the last policy component in Operational Expectation 10 states, and I will read it, the superintendent may not allow any current or future buildings, mascots, nicknames, logos, activities, or events to reference or portray bias, derogatory connotations, or prejudice associated with race, color, creed, income, religion, sex, age, national origin, ethnicity, marital status, sexual orientation, gender, honorably discharged veteran or military status, or the presence of any sensory, mental, or physical disability. Essentially, the board has an expectation that we are using naming conventions that are not discriminatory. So that's in essence. It is in compliance with noted exceptions for a couple of reasons. One, there were no formal evaluations conducted during the 22-23 school year. We also, for some reason, we don't have a superintendent's interpretation. And so I think that's an important aspect to this because the board's policy is very broad and there's some components to it for me that need to be defined, and so that will be an important part. After we've agreed to an interpretation, I will develop a formal administrative process to conduct those evaluations so that it is clear how we would walk through those processes, where decisions lie, and things like that. Because I know there's been some questions, and I want to make sure that we're responding to those appropriately. So that's why I say it's in compliance with exceptions, because we have a little bit of work to do. And so overall, the report is presented to the board as in compliance with noted exceptions, and that is my report on OE10.
Okay, just a reminder for the board, for the framework for this, we'll first field any, or take any questions or requests for clarification from Dr. Holman on anything that's in the report. I will then, at the conclusion of that, entertain a motion related to the report, and then we can have further discussion around the report. So first, are there any questions or clarifications in regard to the report? Director Guthrie, and then Director Stewart, and then Director Bleasner.
There was a reference in the executive summary about there sort of being an increase in incidents around, let me pull up the exact language, just sort of disruptive incidents, if I remember right. Sorry, I should have had this pulled up, and I cannot find it now. Anyway, that there's nothing in the report. It's very clear that you cannot permit disruptive incidents, and I think that the panorama data would get at a little bit of that. But do we have any data around just some of these incidents that are being monitored here. Is it, because I have heard it too, that, kind of classroom clearing incidents, those types of things are on the rise, disruptive behaviors are on the rise. I'm trying to sort through whether that's an actual thing, or, what sort of data we have around that. Is it just sort of one, particular, like, sort of clusters of challenges that sort of get repeated, or I'm just curious if there's any harder data around that.
So I'll have to follow up with the board if there's specific data related to that. I think you've probably heard the same anecdotal information that I have, and I will just make a couple of statements that I believe to be accurate and true. Coming back from COVID, behavior in our schools was definitely different than it was before COVID, and students more dysregulated, students that hadn't learned school-ready skills for our youngers. We know that we saw more incidents of fighting with our older students. So those things were all true, and I believe now we are starting to see a decline in those. But I'm going to have to come back and see if I have tangible data to report that more accurately. But just in general, we saw an increase in student disruptive behaviors post-COVID.
All right, I'm going to go load out of the order that I just suggested. Shira or Ella, who you can sort between the both of you who goes first and second.
Yeah, we had a question for 10.2. We were wondering which grade level has the most chronic absenteeism, and if it's significant in evaluating how we can avoid this issue.
So we do have those data. I don't have it in front of me, but it might be in the report.
Oops, I don't see it. Yeah.
But so we can get that data because those data are reported by the individual student, which then reports up to a school level, and then we aggregate that for elementary, middle, and high school.
Okay, and then follow up, do we have like data on what's causing these students to not go to school?
Well, that's a bigger question. So we have what students report to us, but that's not always the cause. Does that make sense? We have the reason. A student may say, I'm ill or I'm sick. A student may just not report anything, and it's an unexcused absence. And so at the high school level, our attendance specialists, when we have students that start missing time from school, they actually then individually start working with those students. We have what's called a community truancy board. I don't know if that's a term that you've never missed school, so you wouldn't know about that. But there are actual legal processes when, in particular, our secondary students and in particular our high school students, when they're missing too much school, there's actually legal processes that get put in place. But the state of Washington required school districts to adopt what's called a community truancy board. And so an individual that is chronically absent actually then works with a group of interested staff members and community members to try and identify what is the reason for that absence and how the consistent absences, and how can we remedy that as a system, as opposed to you're going to court because you're missing school. And so those systems are in place to provide benefit before we just use the judicial system, which we're required to do at times. But the community truancy boards are really that step in between, and their job really is to try and identify the true reason why students are missing. So we don't have those data consistently for all of these, but those are some systems that are in place to try and be a safety net for students.
Okay, and then a follow-up question to that. Personally, I was always taught to be a problem solver instead of a problem spotter. So are there any specific things that we are doing to try to curb this at all? Like, are there any systems that we have in place, or are we just responding when we see this become an issue?
In terms of the chronic absenteeism,
Yeah.
so for our high school students, and actually our school attendance specialists work with all students within their community if they need. Their job really is to try and remedy the situation before it turns into a bigger issue. And so we have 4 people, 1 for each of the comprehensive high schools, that their responsibility are the students in that community. And so avoiding absenteeism is the best form. Suspending a student for being absent makes 0 sense, right? And so trying to get to that root cause, and our administrators are working through that. Our deans of students work through that. Our attendance specialists, it's trying to identify, is there a teacher that can be a support? So I would say our schools work through proactive ways to address this, because kids aren't coming to school for a reason. And making school worse is never going to get kids to come back to school consistently.
And then we have one more thing on 10.5 regarding the volunteers. How often are volunteer checks like conducted? Are they like kind of one and done, or is it like, do they have to reapply every year?
Yeah, great question. It's every 2 years.
And then how are we responding to reported incidents regarding the volunteers? Just as like was mentioned in public comment, where there was an incident. We have a process in place?
With volunteers?
Yes.
And so typically those get reported through our schools. And so more often than not, we don't even hear about those centrally at the district. And so our school principals and administration oftentimes will manage that. If it does get brought to the attention of the central office, we respond to that like we would any other incident, evaluate. Is it just a conflict between people? Is it a violation of policy? If so, which policy was violated? And then we'd work with the school and that volunteer to address that.
I don't want to cut you off. Okay, great. We'll come back to you if you have any others. Director Belize, I completely lost track now. We'll start Director Stewart because I'm looking at him.
I'm glad we're able to recognize, or that you recognize and linked up 10.2 to the folks that spoke here tonight. Yes, I recognize that reports of these incidents are almost always handled in a school. It rarely comes out. But we need to have a better reporting system, I think, when it comes to incidents of racism, anti-Semitism, whichever, the kind of bullying that we're talking about there is more systemic that can be classified as hate crimes or hate speech. I think we need to keep, I'd like to see us have a system in place in which we can recognize it, and so we can figure out if there's a way that we can then address it through positive behavior modification with the students. I mean, with lessons and whether it's a civics lesson, if it's a SEL lesson, whatever it might be. Because otherwise we're going to have parents from any group, whether it be our parents that are here tonight, other parents that will show up for the same reason, and justifiably so. If we have a better way of tracking it and a better way of then figuring out, okay, how in the world do we address it? What's our next step? I mean, I have no idea what our next step is after tonight with the folks that are here tonight, other than to thank them for showing up. So I'd like to see us look at a system of when it is, whether it's racism, anti-Semitism, ableism, let's have the school reporting to us so we have a documentation of the number. And we have, we can, again, since we're data-driven, be able to find a way to address it then in the classroom to lessen it. We're never going to extinguish it, but let's lessen it to the degree that, as great as possible.
Guthrie, did you have any? No. Director Bleasner. I'm doing a terrible job. I thought, I thought you had a question, Director Guthrie.
No, I didn't. But
okay.
if I could build on that
Yes.
for a sec. Yeah, I'm curious what our reporting systems look like. I mean, because as the commenter said tonight, there's been an uptick across the nation in anti-Semitic incidents since October 7th. I think we'd be naive to believe that Lake Washington is the one enclave where that's not happening. So I'd be curious what systems we have in place and whether we're seeing the uptick, because I suspect we're missing it. And, you know, the commenter who talked about his 8-year-old, who, you know, was shouted at, you know, as an 8-year-old, or as the parent of an 8-year-old, I think I'm realizing up here that, you know, that she has a student rights and responsibilities handbook that probably says where she should go to report that. Sorry, Stephanie, registrar at my school, I don't think we've signed that yet. And she would not know where to go. Like, that's on me as a parent. And so just thinking about, you know, what are our listening systems? And are they picking up this stuff? And if they're not, how can we get that out there more consistently?
Thank you. I'd say I would echo what you've heard from other board members this evening and our student reps. Thank you very much. Excellent questions. I just had a few questions. So just to build on the 10-2, I did have the question of how we handle those concerns of complaints and things, and the simple of how do we track that data and information. I know we do a lot of it. We have the harassment, intimidation, and bullying. So knowing how that's done so that it can be followed. It's not sort of called out here because we're doing exclusionary discipline. OA 14, I think, is another. That's where I was sort of hunting to see. 1410 is potential, but it's not quite called out in the right way. But I do think it's an interesting piece to think about of how are those policies followed through on even at our school levels in which to be able to respond to these questions, and what are we seeing in regards to harassment. So I'll just toss that out at this point, and then actually could just be in the summary side too. So while you're writing, just know. My other question is with 10-1, and that was about the district teams. And how do you assess that those are implemented with fidelity? We've seen tonight a few times the fidelity inventory assessment for MTSS. I'd be intrigued to sort of, perhaps through a board brief or through some way of learning, well, what does that mean? So what is it that you're looking at within the schools? If MTSS is really sort of this broad framework we're utilizing, what are we expecting our schools to accomplish? So just wondering what that looks like. And that might be helpful to sort of understand how that fits into 10.1 as well. Because it sounds like that's what you're using to determine fidelity with actually having those district teams. I was just wondering, are there criteria on how they have to be implemented, or there? So there's my rambling question for you.
Was your question, could we do a study session on that?
It would not necessarily be a study session. It was getting information around that whole, and that's up to you all to decide what's the best way in which to do so.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions from anyone?
I just have one. So I know personally at my school we have a reporting tool for bullying, harassment, and sexual assault. I don't know if that's like standardized across the district, and if it wasn't, would that be a possibility to start like expanding it possibly?
The reporting of harassment, intimidation, and bullying, by law, there are components of it that are formal and informal. And as the board was talking, I'm kind of thinking about how do we think about a reporting system when the individual reporting can say, well, I'd rather choose an informal process to try and remedy this, and so thus not making it a formal report. when we're dealing with students and student issues, those are documented in our student information system. When we're working with families, those aren't always documented in a system. If a parent was to come to us and report, I was harassed, if we investigate it, that documents it formally, but it's different than I think what is being discussed tonight. So I'll have to think about that. When you talk about sexual harassment, when that's reported, there's a very formal process for that. We have a Title IX coordinator who gets involved with that. So every time there's a report of sexual harassment, our Title IX coordinator is notified of that, and I believe has specific actions that need to be taken to respond to that. Investigations, reports, timelines, and those kinds of things.
Okay, I'm not hearing any other questions or requests for clarification. So now the board will again, I guess I will entertain a motion to accept and approve the monitoring report as presented, which is in compliance with the exceptions that are noted, that were noted in the presentation tonight and in the written report.
So moved.
Director Bleasner?
Second.
Moved by Director Bleasner, excuse me, and seconded by Director Guthrie that we approve the monitoring report as presented. Thank you, Director Stewart, which is as compliant with the exceptions noted. And any further discussion? Director Guthrie? Thank you.
I was turning my microphone off.
We're not on the same page today. Director Bleasner, I think I saw you reach for your microphone. Were you turning it on or off?
I was turning it on. And so I would just say, appreciate the decline that we're seeing in overall exclusionary discipline. I think that's a good call out. That's a lot of additional work that's going on. I think that's a great way to see that component. I think through the sort of the questions we heard tonight, some focused around how do we deal with reporting at the school level in regards to some of these incidents that we might see to be able to ensure there's a response and if that's occurring to it. So that seems to me something to be built in. Something we didn't talk about was actually from last year, from the study session that we had then, was actually around an issue of grading policy and whether it belonged in OE10. I don't really want to lose that because that was a conversation that we held. So just as the study session comes up, that would be something to be thinking about in which to be able to put that on. So I just didn't want to lose that. And as I had mentioned, I do think there is some value in the board understanding what the fidelity inventory assessment is, just to understand sort of how are we structuring this. If it's data we're using, we should sort of understand what it's looking at. So I think that's another piece that I would add. But I think the work's going through that's happening is good, so I think there's a lot of good compliance with what we're doing in this.
We have I was looking at our work plan, and then related to OE10, we have coming up in January an update on the high school student experience evaluation that's ongoing. And I think some of that work will then feed into, on February 5, we have policy development, our first study session meeting around policy development work for OE10. And it is, somebody remembered, because it is captured in the overview for the study session that there will be an emphasis on grading and restorative practices in that review. So thank you again for flagging it, because I agree. That's something that we heard a lot about a year ago. It hasn't bubbled up again yet this year. I mean, it probably will when grades start coming out. But I think it's helpful to capture. Any other comment or discussion? I have one. I think it'll be, I guess it's sort of a rhetorical, open-ended question. I wonder if the policy language that we have in OE10 really captures the values that our students have for what they want in the learning environment. I mean, I think about like what we have in here, what we're measuring. It's around, and we talk about safety and belonging. Something that we hear a lot of from students is not just those two, but it's sort of their, feeling of stress and feeling, like they're trying to keep their head above water at all times. And that's not, I don't think that's captured in what we're monitoring. And I also don't know if the policy language is capturing that as well. So I think that I hope Ella and Cheryl, when we're doing this work, that you can help, lead us through what those values are that students want to see in this policy language. So, because when I look at it, it just feels like, I don't know. I just don't feel like what we have there quite gets at it. It feels like top down almost, right? So, okay. Any other, off my soapbox, any other comments or discussion? Okay.
One other quick one. As we look at the OA10, what's missing is sort of that introductory paragraph of why does this exist, which therefore then those policies where the board sort of states its purpose as to why it's here. I think then it would be easier to have those actually fit where they need to be. I think this was some of that revision. So that's just another piece I see being added.
Thank you, Director Bleasner. Okay, it was moved by Director Bleasner this time, seconded by Director Guthrie, that we approve the monitoring report as presented, which is in compliance with the exceptions that are noted. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Motion carries. Okay. It is 8:40. The next item on the agenda is a series of board summaries for monitoring reports. We are going to take a 5-minute recess right now, a 4-minute recess right now, and we will return at 8:44 on the dot. We're live? Okay. We'll be returning as soon as the video returns. What? Okay. I'll tell you later. The next item on the agenda is the board's summary for monitoring report for OE12 facilities. And I believe... And I'd like to thank Director Bleasner for writing the board summary for OE12 based on feedback that was able to be collected. Are there any further comment on the board summary that is in our packet for tonight from anyone on OE12? We'll be just a preview for what we're going to be doing. We have board summaries for OE12, OE13, and OE14 on the agenda in successive order. So any additional comment from anyone on the summary for OE12? If not, I don't mean to shortchange anything, but if not, I will entertain a motion to approve the board summary for monitoring report 12 facilities as presented.
Before you do that, I'm just trying to call it up. I apologize. I think it's somewhat important to know sort of what the summary says for it, of what the board is saying. I know everybody had a chance to read it, but unfortunately, nobody else, if you don't have it in front of you. So, because part of it just calls out a variety of things. So the board does find the superintendent in compliance with OE12. The board recognizes the effort and work to ensure high quality and excellent facilities that meet the needs of our students and community, as well as the community support required to support those efforts through passage of bond and levy funding. The board also appreciates the additional focus on sustainability and resource conservation for facilities and maintenance, and efforts to address additional community demands for space when able, such as for pickleball and lacrosse. Some of the direction that was provided was for the policy, please review and consider updating policy to include security in regards to our buildings and facilities. And for evidence, consider providing web links for reports or data that are available online for specific data. Those were tried as part of as I was reviewing it, the one piece I felt like we lost in some of our policy piece was actually talking about the actual physical security within our buildings. And that actually is a big component that we speak to, and I didn't feel like it got called out. So I didn't include that as a piece of the direction.
I will entertain a motion to approve the board summary for monitoring report 12 as presented. Okay,
So moved. Yeah, second.
second. Moved by Director Blesner, seconded by me. I think I can do that. It's been a while since I've chaired a meeting. That we approve the monitoring report for OE 12 as presented. Any additional discussion? I will highlight something that Director Blesner and I were just briefly talking about during the break. I think I'll say it aloud. I think that we as a board do need to think about how we do board summaries for OEs that are on, and I know Director Blesner agrees because she just said this to me, for OEs that are on consent agenda. And so I think the idea, I'll have to loop back with President Choi, I think the idea is to have that discussion at our extended study session on December 6th or something, 4th, 6th, somewhere. It's a Saturday, where we're going to review our governance policies. So I just think we kind of talk through it and think about what we all want to do as a board. Okay. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none. Motion carries. Okay. Next item on the agenda is the board summary report for operational expectation 13, which is technology. This was also on the consent agenda at our past meeting, was approved by the board. I'd like to thank Director Stewart for writing a very concise summary, which reflected that we didn't, because it was on consent agenda, there was no comment around it. We approved it as presented. Any additional comment from anyone on the board on the summary? Director Guthrie?
Yeah, I wanted to call some things out. First of all, I really wanted to express my thanks for the data dashboards. I know how much work it is to pull those together, and I'm very, very appreciative of the work. I know as a data person, all you want is for somebody to be like, yes, I actually look at that. So data people, like, yes, people are looking at it, and very appreciative. It just, Dr. Holman is probably also appreciative because it allows me to self-answer questions that would otherwise go to him. So that's really fantastic work that I think should be highlighted. One other thing that I also wanted to say was with regards to filtering. This is an area where this is specifically sort of the student devices, especially at secondary when they come home. I've just heard a lot of parent comments around, what is being filtered. I think most of the really inappropriate stuff absolutely is getting filtered out, so I agree that this is in compliance. I think the bigger challenges are, games, having YouTube access, even if it's not inappropriate, but just not exactly conducive to learning 100% of the time, let's put it that way. I know that this is a challenge nationwide, and so I also hate to bring problems without solutions, but I am bringing I won't call it a problem, but just a challenge that I would love to see some additional thought in that area, and whether there's anything that we can do to just help alleviate some of those distractions.
Yeah, I just had one thing to potentially add to the summary. It's based on sort of our legislative priorities that we've been talking about also with the WASDA legislative thing, and that is in this technology we have nothing about artificial intelligence, and not sure if it goes here, if it actually belongs under the instructional program. But in other regards, I think, and I've had conversations with our deputy superintendent who would tell me it's going to the instructional program, and I don't disagree with that. But I just wanted to make sure it got brought up that it's something we're thinking about, and perhaps we want to build that somewhere into our policies as well to make that clear in that setting. So that'd just be something I'd add into the summary at some point, and whether it's here or somewhere else, just something to think about.
Well, I guess to Director Blesner, are you proposing to amend the summary?
Yes, I should say I would move to amend the summary to include that we develop a sub-policy within one of the OEs in regards to artificial intelligence and what our policy is with that.
If we're doing that, then we ought to be also looking at the filtering that Director Guthrie was talking about too, so.
I believe I have 3 amendments. 1 is the commendation for data dashboards. 2 is a questioning about filtering and ensuring that we are not just compliant with SIPA and COPA, but that we're actually working to make tangible progress towards filtering the other distractors. And then I have add to the summary the consideration of artificial intelligence into our policy structure, maybe not here, but maybe somewhere else.
Yes, and then there was one more as I was reviewing last year's monitoring report to sort of see those different pieces. And I did actually have a conversation with Dr. Holman about these specifics, but cyberbullying was definitely one that was brought up. And thinking about OE10's conversation tonight, I think that might be the place that it goes. And so as you have that discussion, something to think about. And digital citizenship. So those were the 2 that we had talked about last time to include, but we don't currently have them. So I'm not sure, it's more just not wanting to lose that work and have the conversation. Whether it goes somewhere is to be decided.
So I will add cyberbullying and digital citizenship for consideration into the overall policies or monitoring.
And then I'm going to toss one more at you. And it's along the data dashboard line. And my understanding is it's on the work plan, and that is actually an external dashboard for our community to be able to access and see, so that they also have that capacity. We've talked about it. It was sort of on the last one, so just one, and I know that's on the work plan you had stated, so. And that would be the different amendments I would put forward.
And then I don't know if this is possible, but I know that you mentioned something about an AI addition. I'd also like to see that addition added to not only students but also the use by teachers, because I've had a few friends that received AI feedback. So I'd love to see something regarding that.
I guess here's what I propose we do. If Dr. Holman could summarize what he heard to be the various amendments to the summary, and then I'll entertain a motion to amend the summary report to either include all of those, some of those, or what have you. Let's do it that way. Let's see how you're. Well, I guess, if I may, this sort of highlights to me the challenge of putting these things on consent and then bringing it back with a written report, because now we're having the discussion that we would have had if we had monitored it, but in this kind of odd, haphazard way. And so something to think about when we have a full board discussion on this at study session. Dr. Holman?
I have 6 areas that I will add to the summary, of which, if the board approves the summary tonight, these will be added to it. One is a commendation about the data dashboard that the board has access to. Second is just questions about filtering and ensuring that we're doing everything we can to avoid distractions to learning, even though the content's not inappropriate, things such as games and our work around YouTube or with YouTube. Add AI considerations for students and adults to the policies. Consider areas such as cyberbullying and digital citizenship as part of our policy structure, and then just a question about community data dashboard as part of compliance as well.
Okay, so do I hear a motion to approve the report with those items included as accommodations, direction, and questions?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Director Bleaser, seconded by Director Stewart. Any additional discussion on the motion?
Absolutely appreciate the work that goes into technology. call out for all the efforts. The data and access to that is pretty impressive, along with the work in which to create a very safe and secure environment for our students in technology. I think that's an important thing, and as we go forward with even doing more, appreciate those efforts that are going into it through the update that we saw.
Okay, all those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Okay, thank you, everyone. The next item on the agenda is the board summary for monitoring report for OE 10, which is the board's anti-racism, anti-discrimination, equity, and inclusion in education policy. The monitoring report for OE 14 was presented and approved by the board at the October 2nd board meeting. President Choi, I believe, prepared the board summary for this evening. Any further comment from the board on the board summary that's in the packet? Director Guthrie?
Have a comment. Yeah, and this is in 14.4. There was some data presented around choice schools. As part of the conversation, we agreed that it was the first cut of some of the data, and it was a big step forward. But definitely some recognition that there's more work that we need to do in that area to really understand some of the gaps. I'm also curious, since we had that conversation, I don't think we knew at that point that the choice school enrollment form, I guess, was going to be moving to Parent Square. And so I'm specifically curious whether there are opportunities for different data, or if that changes the monitoring data that we have going forward. Sorry, actually, I think it was 14.5. Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
so just...
Yeah, and sorry, 14.5 to be
Okay,
clear.
so Dr. Holman is taking notes, and this, well, we'll have follow-up on this later. Okay. Okay, any other discussion around the OE 14 board summary that's in the packet? Okay, hearing none, we will proceed to a vote on the motion. Oh no, I guess we have to. I need a motion first, huh? Would that be a good start? I'll entertain a motion to approve the board summary for monitoring report 14, anti-racism, anti-discrimination, equity, and inclusion in education as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Director Stewart, seconded by Director Guthrie. Any additional discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing none, we will vote. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Dr. Holman.
So one of the final step for monitoring that my team and I are engaged in is the district's response to the board summary. And essentially what we're doing is we're creating a to-do list. So the board summary has some actionable items. The board summaries have some areas to consider. And so we are going through these, and we're actually writing up what our task list is for each monitoring report. And so we have a format now. We have almost completed results 3 and OE 14 at this point. And what we will do is we will then transmit that to the board through briefs, and we will attach it into board docs with the board summary. And that essentially allows all of us to be very clear as to what are the specific action items that we're taking. And I will also say, going through this process also gave us a good insight into what's helpful and what is ambiguous. If the board wants us to consider something, like truly just take some time and think about this, talk with people, and there's no real action item other than consider, then use the word consider. If the board has a specific direction, create a new indicator for, 14.5, whatever, then be really explicit about what it is that the board is summarizing from the conversation, because then we're not guessing as to what the board is looking for from the summary. And so using really exact language, and truly, if it is consider, we will document who's going to talk about it and consider it and do that, but there really isn't an action item beyond that unless that consideration turns into something that we're going to do. And so we recognized that as we went through R3 and OE 14. And so, again, it helps us to know exactly what the board wants as you write your summaries.
So one thing I would add, that the piece of why consider is used is because the indicator truly is the superintendent's place to put forward, and then we can say we'd like to see this. So it was sort of trying to walk that line, but if direct is easier, so that's my question on that piece, is because the responsibility lies in the superintendent's field for indicators.
Yes, and if we're not in agreement as to whether or not the indicators are truly providing the board with the ability to evaluate the policy, then I would rather the board just says, please bring forward additional indicators in this area for this policy component.
Okay. That was the last item on the non-consent agenda for consideration tonight. The next item on the agenda is the superintendent report. Dr. Holman.
Okay, so tonight I have a single topic that I want to share with the board. It's about our first, maybe annual, EdTech Virtual Summit that was held this weekend. When Forrest Baker and his team were here, they referenced it, and appreciate Director Guthrie participating, and I've actually asked her to participate in the presentation tonight as well. I just wanted to share with you some of what we did. A couple quotes in here that are that Executive Cabinet has talked about quite a bit, and it really is kind of a new way of thinking about what are we preparing students for and their future. This quote, I think, does it great justice, that the new mission of schools is to prepare students for jobs and ways of life that do not exist, using knowledge that has not yet been discovered, creating ideas and solutions for products and problems that have not yet been identified, using technologies that have not yet been invented. Like, you think about the world we're preparing students for. Think about a kindergarten student and what we're preparing them for. Well, we don't know. And so it's really about thinking big about the work that we're doing as a district, being creative, innovative, knowing that we need to prepare students for a future that really has different elements to it. The virtual summit was very successful. Again, it was held this Saturday from 9 to 1. And staff were offered clock hours. So to maintain certification, staff need to acquire clock hours over time. And so the team did the requisite work to be able to offer clock hours for this. And it was done all on Teams. The keynote was Jeff Utek. You may have heard of him before, but he's a former teacher and educator, and probably a technologist as well. But to hear him speak and to talk about just the history of innovation in K-12 education, and you can imagine his thinking and comments around AI and how that can really shape and inform the world that we live in, and how it can be a support to the world that we live in. And so he gave the keynote and did a nice job around that. We had multiple sessions that were offered to staff. Director Guthrie and I started with Jeff Utek in his keynote, then went to his hour and 45-minute session on generative AI and how that can be used and implemented in the classroom. And you can see here an array of presenters from district staff presenting on various topics related to technology, to bringing in experts from the field. You can see in the upper right-hand corner, Canva for Education coming in and providing information about their product. And then we ended our time in the bottom right-hand corner, and the study that we're working with the University of Stanford in regards to, it's the AI writing feedback model. And so it was pretty impressive to hear the work that they're doing and thinking about, and their encouragement for staff to participate. And you can see there all sorts of different sessions that were provided that day. Another comment that we keep coming back to is that artificial intelligence will replace humans, but humans with AI will replace humans without AI. And it's the idea that AI has a power to it to provide information and resources and considerations. Whether we agree with this or not, I don't know, but it's the idea that we need to be thoughtful about equipping our students to be future ready, and students that understand how to use ethically, how to use well, and really the purposes. One of the things I found fascinating in our session this weekend was talking about the bias that is inherent in artificial intelligence. And it's the same bias that's in the internet. It's the same bias that's in the world of, the knowledge base that is the World Wide Web. And artificial intelligence is just pulling from that same set of biased information. And so we have to be equipped and well equipped to be able to respond to that. At one point, I saw over 82 individuals on the screen, and 75 of them reported in who they were. You can see in the bottom right-hand corner one of our very own. And I have asked Director Guthrie just to provide her comments about her experience, what she appreciated about it and learned.
I signed in like that specifically because they wanted to test the other options. So just making sure that they knew how there was like a multiple choice, and so I was testing out other for them, and clearly it worked. Yeah, it was a really wonderful event. Very much appreciated that it was on Teams. That really helped me with balancing things. And yeah, I think it was really fun to watch the transformation over the course of just a few hours. I would say during the keynote, there were a lot of skeptical comments. A lot of teachers, saying, I don't know. I think one comment was Jeff was sort of speaking to preparing students for the jobs of tomorrow, and there was, well, are we creating employees or are we creating citizens? Just very respectful, but definitely skeptical. And then going into Jeff's workshop, a lot of people there were completely new to AI, and sort of said right off the bat, hey, I haven't used it. And Jeff started with, just some fun activities, writing songs, creating meal plans, and then we were working on meal plans, and we were tweaking the meal plans, and the moment that I never fails to put a smile on my face with this technology came, which is when Jeff bridged from, hey, you can tweak this meal plan to your preferences, to, oh, you can tweak what you're doing in your classroom. You can use this tool to tweak what you're doing in your classroom to your students' preferences and your students' needs. And I think through Teams, I could hear heads exploding all over the Puget Sound area, where teachers were all of a sudden like, oh my goodness, I just plugged in week X of Wonders, our ELA curriculum. And now I have ideas to use with my students on IEPs, on Monday. I was reminded that separately I had just been in the ELA adoption committee meeting for that. And I was sitting at a table with a second grade teacher, and she said, it's been tough because I have 25 kids in my class, but I really only have 5 second graders. Everybody else is on the spectrum from pre-kindergarten to 7th grade. And the teachers, 2 days later, then I'm sitting on this call where the teachers are just all of a sudden popping out with ideas of, wow, I can really, really target this instruction to the needs of my learners. And I was reminded of that moment too when Dr. Rose was speaking at our study session earlier today. It was just very much just recognizing inclusion, recognizing UDL, and not as concepts that we talk about, but as like, oh my gosh, I can do this, and these generative AI tools can enable that. So yeah, hopefully it was clear. It's to be clear, it's not necessarily generative AI used by students. This could be teachers. Jeff called it thought partners, of just getting ideas for activities that they can do with learners. But targeting reading passages to different reading levels, just being able to take a single reading passage and target it for your pre-K readers, target it for your 7th grade level readers. Jeff gave the example of a student who is just all about space. I think it was some topic, and he's in 6th grade, but he reads at a 3rd grade level, and all of a sudden teachers could generate for him new reading passages to practice on every single day. So that was a really fun moment. That was definitely, I would say that was the highlight of my year, was really to see that technology just really coming to life in that session. Lots of other great moments throughout the day too, but that was just really exciting to see, and I was really excited. I think there were about 40 people on that call, and just to see that number go through that. And now, we just have to repeat that across a couple thousand staff, and then we'll be good to go. But really seeing that transformation over the course of, I would say that came an hour in, and that's what gets me so excited about generative AI, is just that the benefits, once you start playing around with it, the benefits become clear really quickly, and the limitations too. It's sort of, from reading the news, you might think it's this omnipotent technology. But it's not, and the teachers hit that as well. There was a moment when we were trying to write a song, and this teacher was struggling, and what we figured out was that her prompt, she was prompting to compose a song, and the AI was saying, oh, I can't compose. But if you change it to write, it'll write you a song. And so, to the point of AI is not going to replace humans if it can't even understand the difference between write and compose. It's not going to replace us, but it's definitely a very valuable tool for use in conjunction with human brains. So yes, thank you for inviting me. I had a lot of fun. Thank you for all the teachers who allowed me to be an interloper there. And yeah, I hope to see it continue in the future.
I think what it highlighted for me was just it can equip people with additional tools to do their work. Generative AI could never replace a teacher, because a teacher understands empathy. They understand the sigh a student makes when they're struggling. There's everything that the human elements, and one of the things I was doing as teachers were developing lesson plans, I asked it to write an IEP goal, and I gave it very specific components, and then I said, write 10 intervention strategies for this IEP goal. And were they all perfect? No, but it's that idea that it can be a thought partner. It can bring ideas that as professionals we can consider, we can use, and so that was pretty interesting. And it's a new horizon, and I'm excited for what it can bring. Here's some comments directly from our staff around this. Some of the takeaways from our time together, all the resources that we have available to elevate our teaching and support students. Innovation can be scary, but also extremely beneficial. Being flexible and open-minded is helpful. Totally different outlook on AI and ChatGPT in education and personal life. using generative AI to scaffold instruction for students. Those are some powerful statements right there. And then next question, what are your initial ideas on how you might integrate some of your new learning? I can use generative AI to build supports in existing assignments, differentiation, love the dictation to translation feature, great for our ML kids, be able to express their learning. I don't know exactly which session that was from. This training is one of the best, I feel. Tips and better organization. OneNote were useful, and learning more about Canva was really helpful for me and my students in creativity. I just want to thank the team that put this together. It was 75 to 80 people, but I guarantee you it's 75 to 80 people that walked away better equipped to lead or use this for the betterment of students. You met, I believe, almost all of these folks at our last board meeting, and this team led by our Executive Director of Technology Services, Forrest Baker, and really appreciate everything they did to put this together for staff. That's my report.
May I ask one question? Were any of these workshops videotaped? And will they be available?
I don't know if, actually, they were recorded. All of them were recorded, with the keynote being 2 minutes late in the recording.
Will they be posted somewhere so people could have access to them?
They're posted on an internal portal, and so I'll see how we can get access for board members.
I actually think it might be interesting to potentially, other school districts might also be interested in this information and things, so potentially additional access too. So.
Yeah, we'll think about how to provide there could be some vulnerability for staff in this, just in the chat and things like that. So
right.
We'll look at it and see if this is the right resource to share.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Holman. The next item on the agenda is public and community affairs. This portion of the business meeting of the board is an opportunity for any board members to inform and provide updates from organizations or groups with which they engage on behalf of Lake Washington School District. We will begin with a legislative update from Director Stewart.
This coming Thursday, I'll be joining our staff. I'll be joining Caitlin to welcome Senator Wellman, State Senator Wellman, to one of our elementary schools to look at the inclusion process and how it's working, and give her a kind of a boots on the ground viewpoint of something that she's very much committed to. So I look forward to seeing what we come up with.
Does anyone, excuse me, I can't talk anymore. Does anyone else have any other public or community affairs updates? Okay, the next item on the agenda is, Shira, sorry, I didn't see you.
Oh, I just wanted to shout out the Eastlake volleyball team and LDub volleyball team for winning Kinkos for their respective divisions, and then also LDub DECA for hosting an event of 250 plus people for LDub DECA, Redmond DECA, Juanita DECA, Eastlake DECA, Bellevue DECA, and Inglemoor DECA, and just connecting a bunch of students. So yeah.
Great, thank you. The next item on the agenda is school visits. The board conducted school visits on October 24th. I was not able to attend. Is there anyone here who would like to provide a brief, let's call it 90-second summary on that? Dr. Holman, thank you. Appreciate it.
I wasn't there. But I do want to recognize in the board's packet, there is a written summary. A new process that we have is one of our staff from the communications department will be participating in all of our school visits, and we'll do a write-up based on the experience, the observations, and as you can see from the write-up, there's also pictures that go with it, and they were actually really good pictures. The first stop on the visit was at Einstein Elementary, where the team met with Principal Imai and Associate Principal Villanueva, and really looked at that whole cycle of Tier 1 and Tier 2 instruction, how they're addressing literacy instruction in the schools, and all of the components that go with it, the data that they're using, the collaboration that they're conducting. We heard about it in our study session tonight, the various scheduling components that are in place to ensure that students have access to the services that they need. And so I consistently heard from both staff that were there and board members that it did a great job of really putting into evidence that whole cycle of learning for students and how schools are implementing our strategic work. And furthermore, Einstein Elementary is the host of our dual language program. And what I appreciate about what Robin shared was their dual language program, while yes, it's a program, those teachers are collaborating with their grade level peers when they're thinking about literacy instruction. They're thinking about how do we provide literacy instruction, yes, for students in both English and in Spanish. And they're very different methods for how you approach literacy instruction in those two languages. And so that was the first stop. The second stop was Rose Hill Middle School, where the board engaged with the Principal Gorder around the co-teaching and push-in services and their work around really understanding how can it be effective and what are some of the barriers that they're currently seeing in their school with their students that aren't allowing them the success that they want. And so appreciate our principals and schools opening up their doors, welcoming us in. I know they appreciate it when the board is there, and I know the board appreciates the principals and schools opening their doors so that they can be there. So on Tuesday, our next visit is Lake Washington High School for a Veterans Day assembly. I believe currently scheduled was President Choi and Director Stewart. President Choi, I don't believe, will be in attendance, and so Director Stewart will be there, hosted by Associate Superintendent Barbara Posthumus. I guess you will, won't you?
Okay, the next item on the agenda is board committee updates. I guess, so if I know everyone is serving on various committees right now, if anyone has any substantive updates to provide, please do.
I'd like to just say that the strategic plan committee for the students, we met for the first time. The exciting thing about this one is really thinking about what is sort of today's technology, I think sort of aligned well with some of the conversation that took place in that room. So what is the vision for our students going out? And I think the wide range of participants in that committee, I think we have 5 students who are engaged with it, as well as a broad range of parents and teachers. I think it'll create a whole interesting conversation to really do some visioning around sort of that student expectation going forward. So thank you to Deputy Superintendent Beebe for leading that, and look forward to the work there. So there's be good stuff coming out of that.
Director Guthrie?
Yeah, I mentioned that there was a meeting of the elementary ELA adoption committee meeting. Yes, getting that right. Yeah, our next meeting is going to be the full group. We're continuing to meet. This meeting there were 2 meetings on separate days, trying not to completely crash the subsystem across the district by pulling out a huge number of teachers. The things that we worked on, coming up with some shared definitions, shared terminology, kind of going again to what Dr. Rose was saying earlier today around literacy, around terms like the science of reading, around terms like small group instruction. Exactly what does that mean? We spent some time mapping Wonders, which is our current elementary ELA curriculum, to Scarborough's Reading Rope, which is sort of a framework around how we think about literacy, weaving together basically word identification, which gets increasingly automatic, and what's the top? I forget what the top of the rope is. I always just call it the top of the rope, which is things like background knowledge, reading comprehension, and so on. And it was super interesting. I was actually at a table with, I think, 2 teachers who had been on the original Wonders adoption. And as we were going through, they were discovering new resources. I think that what everybody walked away with is just there's a lot out there. Really it becomes the challenge being to know everything that's out there and then bringing it together in a very systematic way to make sure that we're doing a great job of literacy instruction. It was a really nice follow-up to the Einstein visit, because that was some of what I was talking about with Robin was, witnessing some small group instruction going on with an MTSS coach and sort of saying, is that Wonders that you're working on? And she was like, oh yeah, it's buried deep in Wonders, but those tools and those resources are there. And so I think that got everybody thinking about sort of how can we do better with this rollout, and hopefully not coming back in 10 years and saying, oh wow, we don't even know everything that's there. As teachers, how can we do a better job of making the resources available, helping people find the right resources to do a great job of instruction. We spent a little bit of time on assessments as well, and then finished up the day reviewing. There are brand new, I think just last month, OSPI learning standards for English language arts. And basically OSPI said we're revising the learning standards, but we're not going to tell you until like 2026 what they are or something like that. But I would say that my takeaways were that there's a strong emphasis on science of reading, and also on integrating in things like digital literacy into those standards. So yeah, that was a half day, and then we're meeting again at the end of the month.
What else?
We had I thought we covered this at the last meeting, but there was also the strategic planning committee for primarily for the staff and educators. Matt Gillingham facilitated that. It basically started off as an introduction of why we're here and what we're looking at and where the mission for the group. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, we had a very low attendance, and we're hoping we're going to build on that because to be quite frank, though, the low attendance allowed us to have more interaction. So perhaps it was a good thing for that initial visit.
Okay, I attended the first facility advisory committee meeting. A lot of familiar faces who had been on previous iterations of the long-term facilities task force and the revisions to that, and then also a lot of new faces. And so I think it seemed to me like a pretty good cross-section of our community. And as part of that meeting, everyone there provided, Barbara, they identified, was it interests or values? Is that what we collected, right? And I think those will be provided, that will be summarized and provided to the board at our next meeting on November 20, when we, at the study session, again, look at the Building Excellence Plan. So I think we'll have some of that input as part of that. And that is our next meeting on the 20th, and that is our study session, followed by a board meeting at 7 p.m. with many items on the non-consent agenda, including 4 summaries that I'm supposed to write between now and then. So to talk to President Choi about that. And we have reached the end of the end of the meeting tonight. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved by Director Stewart, seconded by Director Guthrie. All those in favor of adjourning, please signify by voting aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you.